Welcome to Movie Oubliette, the film review podcast for movies that most people have mercifully forgotten.
I'm Dan.
And I'm Conrad, and in each episode, we drag a forsaken film out of the oubliette.
Discuss it and judge it to decide whether it should be set free
or whether it should be thrown back and consigned to oblivion forever. We review the films others tend to forget. Come with us and open up the movie oubliette.
Greetings, listeners. I hope you have all had unpleasant dreams. You're listening to Movie Oubliette episode 115, the continental colliding podcast with me, Dan, gleefully chowing down on boxes of salmiakki in Melbourne, Australia.
And me, Conrad, recovering from a double inoculation in Cambridge, UK.
In this podcast, we pour over genre films, horror, sci-fi, and fantasy, because we all know when you're strapped for cash, you can always rely on your long-lost great aunt who just happens to be a witch.
Every time. Yes. Oh, we could do with some of that great aunt cash, couldn't we?
Yeah. So double jabbed, Conrad. 2 for 1, was it?
I know. I wasn't expecting it, though. I just showed up for my COVID booster, like a good boy. And they said, yeah, we're doing flu shots as well today. Do you want that too in the other arm?
Wow.
And I thought, yeah, okay. So last night I couldn't sleep on either side because I'm a side sleeper.
Yeah, and me too.
It's not good. So I always start on one side and wake up on the other, so I don't know what happens during the night. But anyway, yeah, so I've got one arm that feels like like I've bumped into it.
Okay, yes.
At some point, it's got a bruise. But the COVID arm, that feels like I've been hit by a car. I can barely lift it. It's terrible.
Wow.
So you're still... Just your culinary experiments just are so inspiring. What on earth what was it, salmiakki?
Salmiakki. Well, it's not something I cook. This is actually a traditional Finnish confectionery. It's a type of licorice because I've got a friend visiting at the moment with his wife, and he's come from Finland, all the way from Finland, and he knows that I love this stuff. I don't know what it is. There is a chemical compound in it that doesn't sound eatable, ammonium chloride. So I guess that's what I'm addicted to. But it's a very acquired taste of licorice. Most people that have it, it's just disgusting and salty and it's very strong, kind of often likened to chewing on a tire. It's black and it's I don't know. I love it. But he's given me boxes of the stuff, so I'm just yes, and like I said, gleefully chowing down.
So you're well stocked now. This reminds me of whenever I used to visit friends in France, they would always beg me to take over a massive box of tea bags because at the time they just couldn't get decent tea anywhere.
Right, yeah. Some PG tips.
Yes, or Yorkshire. Yorkshire tea was always popular. Yeah.
Okay. So, have we been popular in the last couple of weeks? What's in the mailbag today?
Well, we have been. Yes, we've even gained ourselves a new patron. So, welcome aboard, Miki. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Miki also separately sent us a message on our socials to say, I'm a huge fan of the pod. Thanks for providing top-notch content. I love listening to your opinions and always funny commentary, along with insights I'm simply too lazy to find myself, and providing me with a wonderful list of movies to catch up on. So that's wonderful.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, and welcome aboard.
Yes, great to have you aboard. Can't wait to see your comments and suggestions for future films for us to cover. Mm-hmm. You started a great thread on Twitter, which is movie titles that are highly misleading, which has really taken off. People have loved commenting on this. You suggested Ghost Dog, Way of the Samurai, which I haven't seen, but am I right in thinking it's about sort of, urban crime?
No, not really. I think it's a Jim Jarmusch movie. I don't know. It's just an odd movie to really describe, but there's not a lot of martial arts in it, and there's definitely no ghosts or dogs. So very misleading.
Very misleading. Phil suggested Freddy Got Fingered.
Well, I don't know whether that's that misleading. That movie is.
I don't think he does, though, does he?
Well, no. I mean, that movie's just all sorts of wrong, though.
I've never seen it, to be honest. Good old Surge of Cold Crash Pictures said Jurassic Park movie is filled with Cretaceous dinosaurs.
Yeah, I mean, as someone that was a huge dinosaur fan as a kid, yeah, that confused me as well.
Yeah. There's a Jurassic Park exhibition in London at the moment that I'm really tempted to go and see.
Okay.
Big robots.
Ooh.
Phantom Kitten said, I know somebody who'd gotten American Beauty and American Psycho mixed up, and another person who mixed up It Comes at Night and The Night Comes for Us. Suffice to say, they had interesting experiences.
Wow. Yes. Quite different movies.
Very different. And finally, Isaac, our regular guest and social media guru, said, good times, which it most definitely isn't, unless you enjoy anxiety.
Yeah. Yep. A very stressful film, that one.
It is, yeah. Adrenaline pumping stuff. Favorite witchy film, our new patron Miki said, The Craft, 1000%, which
yes.
I think a lot of people from the 90s would agree with. Feruza does rule in that movie.
I mean, anyone that grew up as a teenager in the 90s, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. On Strange Days' use of first-person camera work, we asked for other examples, and Trevor Timmis said, any view from a Star Wars cockpit is always exciting, usually short, but definitely sweet, which is true.
Yeah, it's an interesting take.
Especially going into hyperspace in the Millennium Falcon. That was used to get me excited as a kid for some reason. I don't know why.
Oh, I love it. I love it. When the lines of the stars, it's great.
Yeah, so exciting. Lewis said, I remember that scene in RoboCop where he remembers his old life. That is a very poignant one.
That's true. Yes, that's a good one.
Yeah, that is a very good one. On Strange Days generally, Steve said, great episode. I caught this one originally on VHS and it was one of the first I bought when DVDs hit in 1999. It can be a grim old watch in parts, but as you say, revolutionary techniques used and topics that are still relevant today.
It is. I mean, when I first watched it, I knew it was a very, very good film, but yes, again, like it's not something you want to watch over and over again. I felt the same for The Talented Mr. Ripley. I know it's a great film, but I just felt very icky at the end of that.
I just felt very sad for him, but then I probably identify with Tom just a little bit too much.
Yeah.
And of course, our final word goes to Surge of Cold Crash Pictures.
Hello, Surge.
He says, Strange Days is a well-crafted, fascinating techno-noir that deserves to be seen, but I will push back on anyone calling it a dystopia. Its politics are frustratingly naive, teasing systemic change, then falling back on just a few bad apples discourse in an overwrought finale. I'm still sad it's so hard to track down, though. The world is so well established that I almost don't mind that the plot doesn't kick in for 56 minutes.
Yeah.
Which
we talked about that, yes.
We did. Yeah, it's a very good point about the politics. It does fall back on that, it's just a few officers. And I think I mentioned it does have the old white guy will save the day, whereas I think the reality is that it's institutionalized all the way to the very top, this kind of thing.
Yeah, so. I mean, I don't know. It's a movie. It needs a finite sort of conclusion, not we're all fucked and everyone's bad. Let's just continue with the world, I guess. Not very happy.
Let's just dance to Skunk Anansi.
Yeah.
But yes, as always, we love hearing from you. Please do get in touch through our socials or via email.
Yes, movie.oubliette@gmail.com. Conrad, so what will we be doing today?
Oh, well, I don't know. I think you ought to amble on over to that oubliette and find out.
Oh, yes. All right. Okay, I'm in some sort of old house. Maybe there's a secret passage on this bookshelf. Oh, there is.
Always
Funny
is.
That.
Always.
It's going to go down to the basement. There's candles, swan statues. Oh, and there's the movie. Okay.
Perfect.
All right, coming back.
Great! Just grab a tool and start banging.
I am back.
You didn't feel the urge to cackle evilly while you were down there? No?
No, I don't think I'm the master of the dark, but
So what do you have for us then, Dan?
well, today this is actually a patron's choice chosen by one of our dear patrons, a wicked person. It was spun on the oubliette roulette, and this one came up on top. It's Elvira, Mistress of the Dark.
Ooh.
It's a 1988 horror comedy film directed by James Signorelli, written by Sam Egan, John Paragon, and Cassandra Peterson. It stars Cassandra Peterson as the iconic Elvira, Edie McClurg, Daniel Green, Susan Kellerman, Chris Cam, Ira Hayden, and Kurt Fuller.
Ooh. And what happens?
Well, Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, a popular horror movie TV hostess, loses her job but is offered her dream job of playing Vegas with a catch. She needs to cough up 50 G's. Coincidentally, her great aunt passes away, leaving Elvira a substantial portion of her inheritance. She must now travel to wholesome, untainted Massachusetts to claim her riches, but will the townsfolk take kindly to her gothic one-liners, or will she be burnt at the stake? Also, she has to face off with her demonic, fire-breathing uncle while falling in love, magic potion mishaps, and swatting away horny teenage boys. Sounds like a movie macabre kind of adventure.
Oh, yes, it does indeed. Well, this is going to be fascinating, can't we?
Yes, after the break. Okay, we are back to talk about Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. As a non-American, I had no idea who Elvira was. Well, I had a little bit of an idea. I know she was a hostess of this horror show where she would introduce horror movies. And I think I've seen her cameo or her show up in horror movies. But yeah, not a clue about her sort of reputation or where she came from or anything about her as a persona. How about you, Conrad?
No, complete Elvira virgin here. And I'd go even further to say just the concept of a late night horror movie host just does not exist here in the UK.
Yeah, same.
So the format, who she is, what her shtick is, what her persona is, all of it a complete mystery to me. So this is great in terms of a cultural experience. And I mean, I guess people in the US might think, why are you doing this movie? You know, everybody knows Elvira, but
we don't.
outside of America, not at all. And it wasn't a success either. So it debuted at number 7 in the US box office on the 30th of September 1988, behind Gorillas in the Mist, Heartbreak Hotel, A Fish Called Wanda, Dead Ringers, Die Hard, and Crossing Delancey, and it yielded $5.5 million at the box office against a budget of $7.5 million. So it was not a success. So it is an oubliette movie. And I was fascinated. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I was fascinated. I mean, the movie itself, I'm not sure, but her as an icon and sort of the legacy that she sort of paved the way for is really, really fascinating. So even, the idea of a horror movie host. So she pops up at the start and introduces the movie, but the way that she is presented is not what I expected. She's got kind of a Valley Girl accent.
Yeah.
I really did expect her to have like a Eastern European accent and to be like, it's whispering into the mic, that sort of thing. But it wasn't. Like, she's very sex positive, for one thing. Like, a lot of sex jokes, but not in a sort of demeaning way. She really owns her sort of sexual appeal. And yeah, the Valley Girl accent, I guess, appealing to, because her show came out, it was 83, 84.
Yeah.
So her show, Elvira's Movie Macabre. And so I guess, yeah, appealing to the younger audience. The kids don't want to see someone that, represents old horror, 50s horror. They want to see something modernized. Even though all the movies she's presenting, they are all old horror, B grade, a lot of low budget stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was surprised by... I kind of had expectations, and she kind of broke all my expectations.
Yeah, she did. She's disarming. She's self-deprecating, funny Valley girl. She's not stupid. She's whip smart and funny, but also completely aware of the effect that she has on men, particularly.
So I did want to talk about like the Elvira character and sort of where it sort of stemmed from as well. So there's a really good video essay on YouTube by History Tea Time with Lindsay Holiday. And she compares 3 very iconic characters. We've got Morticia Addams, Vampira, and Elvira. So Morticia Addams came first, but apparently she didn't even have a name. So it started off as a cartoon strip illustrated by Charles Addams. And then the actress Maila Nurmi dressed up like Morticia Addams at a Halloween party and was seen by a studio executive or something, and then gave her a show. So she became Vampira in the Vampira show. Similar, but she's kind of got a mid-Atlantic accent. She's seductive, but kind of sarcastic at the same time. But, this is the 50s, 1954, and her show only ran for like 1 year, I think.
Right.
Because she got embroiled in some sort of scandal with James Dean when he died. Apparently, the media claimed that she was a witch or she used black magic or something. It was just ridiculous. I mean, her show, Vampire, was the first horror hostess show. So, I mean, I guess she got a lot of hate supporting all these gruesome movies. Apparently, she also slept with Orson Welles.
Oh, my.
Which is really interesting. But yeah, her show got canned. I think she cameos in an Ed Wood movie, Plan 9 from Outer Space, and Vampira as well.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And then Addams Family came out, the TV adaptation, which clearly was influenced by Vampira. And then in the 80s, 1981, Maila Nurmi was approached to revive her character by executives, but she wanted to be an executive producer, not to actually be Vampire again. But then creative differences, and then she left the project, and they got Cassandra Peterson to be a new Vampire, renamed Elvira in the movie Macabre. And then, of course, Maila Nurmi tried to sue them for stealing her character, which is very different. I would say it's very different. Like, I do feel like Elvira is a completely modernized version.
Yeah.
I mean, she kind of dresses the same, but not really. I mean, she's got the 80s like bracelets with the studs. She does look much more punk rock and less Transylvania, like Eastern European.
Yeah.
And then the Addams Family movies in the 90s were obviously, again, influenced by Elvira and Vampira.
Yeah.
And it's kind of moved on from there. I feel like a lot of Helena Bonham Carter's characters seem very similar as well in all the Tim Burton movies. So I don't know. It's pretty amazing to see how it's evolved over time.
Yeah, I wonder how much of it is the root of goth girl as a phenomenon generally, or it feels like it could be. It's certainly a very important strand of the development of that whole niche.
Yeah, and for like in terms of female empowerment, like all of these characters are very strong and they're not waiting for a man to save the day.
I mean, in that respect, some of the comedy is challenging retrospectively. I was talking to Melinda of Retroblasting the other day because she'd just seen it and she wasn't sure how she felt about this movie. And I can understand why, because Elvira is molested at least 5 times during this movie.
I know.
She seems to move through a world that's inhabited by a lot of men that just assume, because of the way she presents herself, that she is instantly sexually available to anyone. And although she makes lewd jokes and occasionally says things like, I never turn down a stranger for that matter, she's not actually presented as particularly promiscuous or sexually available. In fact, the whole movie is centered around this typical romantic arc of her falling in love with this really sweet, naive guy in this small town that she gets a crush on, played by Daniel Green.
Yeah. I mean, she did describe in the making of that they were looking for the equivalent of a blonde bimbo as the male love interest. And he really is. He is very, very innocent and naive. He does not get any of her sex jokes at all.
No.
It just completely flies over his head. But yeah, he is the equivalent of that. He's just like he looks like a pro wrestler. He is huge, but he doesn't act like a pro wrestler. He just acts like a really innocent, like small town cinema owner. It's quite a sort of switch up in terms of gender roles, I guess.
Yeah, he's a really sweet guy. And yeah, she's the lady from the big city who's a little bit more streetwise. Just wonderful moments like where she's making crude jokes at him and then stands up with her eyes closed and her lips pursed.
Yeah.
And you just hear the car door clunk behind her as he drives off because he's just completely missed the cues that she wants him to kiss her. So on the one hand, it's quite sweet, and there is nothing explicit or lewd or crude that happens. I mean, the closest is probably the snake gag where the lights go off and she starts saying, "Oh, Bob.
Oh, Bob."
Yeah.
And then the lights come on and she's just fondling a snake. I mean, what did she think she was fondling as well?
Basically, a part of Bob, but wow. I mean, he's a big guy, but even so.
Yeah, I mean, that's impressive. I felt at odds in this movie. Like, I do appreciate, female empowerment. Like, she's always in control. She never lets any man walk all over her. She never gives in to any advances that she doesn't want. But at the same time, she kind of allows the behavior to happen, and she kind of brushes it off like, oh, men, But it's like, that's appalling behavior.
Yes.
Men shouldn't be, brushed off with this sort of stuff. They should be condemned and like arrested. So it is like, I am at odds. But again, this movie is mostly a comedy.
Yes.
And it's mostly a comedy that does not exist anymore. So it is very entrenched in that 80s, almost like slapstick comedy, for one, but also taking a really ridiculous character from a TV show or something that isn't a movie and then putting them amongst normal people, like quote normal people. So I was thinking of other movies like Pee Wee Herman, or like Wayne's World, like even like Austin Powers, like Ace Ventura, like these just completely ludicrous, larger than life characters put into like the normal world, and seeing what unfolds, kind of thing. So I don't know, it's almost like on a different reality. Or her character is, because everyone else, they're just gobsmacked by her presence.
Yeah, I think that's nicely illustrated when she rolls up in the town right at the very beginning, and you've got this wonderful montage of Girl Scouts selling cookies and old ladies sitting on a park bench knitting, and then in rolls Elvira in her black convertible, the Macabre Mobile, or whatever it's referred to as.
That's right.
And with rock music playing, and everyone's shocked. I mean, you're right, there's also the tradition around this time. I think this is a bit of a precursor. I think it's an early example, because you then get Edward Scissorhands in, was it 90 or 91, and then the Addams Family movies in the early 90s, which are these sort of gothic characters being inserted into almost like a weird pastel 1950s suburbia.
Yeah, that's right.
So there's that going on. And it's interesting that you mentioned about Pee-wee, because of course Cassandra Peterson and Paul Rubens, they both come from originally the same comedy troupe, the Groundlings. As does Edie McClurg and many other cast members that are shoehorned into this movie, and John Paragon, I think, as well, who's one of the co-writers. So it sort of comes from this particular tradition as well. So it's very much a phenomenon of its time that doesn't seem to happen now. You're right.
Yeah, I mean, the whole sort of tone of the movie felt very very improvisational. It felt like I was watching just a whole bunch of one-liners, just one after the other. It felt like a stand-up show, but in movie form. And yeah, I hadn't heard of the Groundlings. I had to look them up. So improvisational and sketch comedy troupe and school based in LA, formed in 1975. And a lot of renowned comedy actors have come out of it. So apparently Jennifer Coolidge, Will Ferrell, Will Forte, Kathy Griffin, Lisa Kudrow, John Lovitz, Maya Rudolph, Jimmy Fallon, Daryl Hannah, Mariska Hargitay, Conan O'Brien, Dax Shepard. So a lot of very funny people have come out of it and had very successful careers that I just have no idea. But it did feel like I was watching just a very extended SNL sketch, which is kind of strange because I kind of expected more references to the movies that she presents on her show. I thought that we were going to get cameos. I mean, I did hear that Vincent Price, they did want him to be in this movie, but they couldn't get him for whatever reason. But I thought there was going to be more cameos from, actors from all of these B-grade horror movies from the 40s, 50s, 60s, or like at least more horror, I guess, because it's like 90% of this movie is slapstick comedy.
Yeah, fish out of water comedy. It's a mixed bag, isn't it? So when you get something like the scene where she goes to this great aunt's house, she's got this recipe book that the uncle is after because it's actually a spell book, and she cooks something from it and it turns into this hideous monster that launches out of the pot that she then has to fight. And
the
crockpot monster. You get that, and then you get the whole Master of the Dark and Mistress of the Dark face off between her and the uncle and magical battles at the end. And that kind of feels, I don't know, shoehorned. It's sort of a shock because you're so used to the fish out of water comedy you've been seeing for about 30 or 40 minutes. But I mean, in terms of it being a comedy, I have to say, I mean, it passes the 6 laugh test, as they say. I mean, I was laughing a lot at this movie.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Like, I think it's definitely a comedy that feels quite dated now. Like, it feels like, wow, comedies do not exist like this anymore.
No.
And have not for more than 20 years, I think. It's almost cringy one-liners at times.
Yes.
But yeah, some of them, because they're so quick, you do get the laugh because they don't kind of ham it up. They don't bring it home and do the punchline over and over again, like an Austin Powers scene or something. So they do have that. She is very quick. And the fact that no one seems to get her jokes at all, which is kind of funny because as an audience, because it's almost like you're getting things that the other characters are not getting.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is definitely a comedy.
It is, yeah. No, I think you're right. I think the thing that she has in her favor, some of the lines that Cassandra Peterson has to come out with, I mean, they're groan-worthy. They're like Christmas cracker jokes that we have in the UK, which are designed to make you groan because that unites people rather than specific types of comedy which separates them. The thing is that she does so many that even though she only has like a 50% hit rate between groan and genuine laughter, there's so many of them that she easily passes the 6 laugh test because there's just so much stuff going on, not just from her. You can tell that she genuinely wants everybody in this movie to be hilarious. It is like an ensemble piece. They try to incorporate the format of her show. You see her doing her show at the beginning and getting fired from it. You see her kind of do a Mystery Science Theatre thing where she's riffing against a live performance in the local theatre when she gets to the small town.
That's right. The movie is Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, isn't it?
It is, yeah, Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, which is mostly known because the sequel to it from 1988 was one of the first roles for George Clooney.
Wow. I haven't seen either,
No.
but I do want to watch them. Yes.
No, I also noticed that when she's doing her show at the beginning, she's doing it for a movie called It Conquered the World, which is a Corman movie featuring Peter Graves, Lee Van Cleef, and Joe Dante favourite Dick Miller is in there as well in the clip that you see. And she mentions that next week it's going to be The Thing with Two Heads.
I know.
Which made me giggle, which is our episode 109 with Tom Woodruff Jr. Still can't believe we got to talk to Tom Woodruff Jr.
I know.
It's amazing. So yeah, you get some of it, but you don't get a lot of it. And you're right. I kind of wanted more.
Yeah, I think I just wanted more horror, I guess. I wanted more There was a little bit. There's one scene when she's traveling to the town where she picks up a hitchhiker and he ends up being a werewolf or something. And she kicks him out.
Yeah, I think he's supposed to be Manson.
Oh, right.
He's another groundling, but he's supposed to be Charles Manson, but she just sends him packing without his shirt on.
Yeah.
So I don't know what happens to him.
Yeah, more monsters, more rubber suits. I kind of wanted that, or more sort of tributes or references to B-grade horror. I guess we're so used to such meta narrative now in comedies and horror now, but I guess it didn't really exist back then.
No, maybe not.
There's a few things I wasn't sure about with this movie. So the message, like sort of moral of the story at the end, it is about uniqueness, right? It's about being yourself. If you're weird or disenfranchised in some respect, owning that and being proud of that, like what she is as Elvira. But I feel like none of the characters did that. Like, they weren't really that unique or different. I guess what that girl was a little bit.
Yeah.
She wanted to wear makeup and do her hair.
Yeah, Robin wanted to express herself with her own personal image, which she finally got to do when she went to the theatre show. Yeah, but you're right, there's not a huge amount of it. I mean, the teenage element is something that was foisted upon them by the studio, NBC, who said that unless you have teenagers in the movie, no teenagers will watch the movie.
Yeah.
Which makes no sense at all, as Cassandra Peterson points out in the making of.
Yeah.
So they shoehorned these three kids in, one of whom is Ira Hayden, who I mostly know as Will, the Wizard Master from Nightmare on Elm Street 3. So it's nice to see him in another movie.
Yes.
Yeah, they have this whole thing where she's basically this brazen character that just dresses how she wants and is very sex positive and outgoing and gothic and edgy. And she shows up in this ultra conservative town where everybody is horrified. And the kids are sort of trapped in the 1950s. Like at one point, Robin says something like, "Oh, yes, it is getting awfully late." And I thought, what kid said this in 1988? You're joking. But it's the kids in this conservative town fall in love with Elvira. Initially, the boys are just hanging on her window trying to get a glimpse of her undressing. But eventually, they genuinely like her and befriend her, which I feel is what happened with her fan base watching her show, that initially it's just titillation, but eventually everybody warmed to her and felt very dedicated to her.
Yes.
There is something there about self-expression and being yourself, and if you are disenfranchised and feel like the odd one out, that you shouldn't have to worry about it. I think she was supposed to deliver a speech at the end about friendship and sticking together. There's this whole thing where the kids are threatened that if they associate with her or go to her show, that they'll be expelled. And they all realize that if they all go, there's no way they can expel all of them. So there's something about unity and protest in there. And the town also realizes that even though she looks a particular way, that doesn't necessarily mean that she's bad. And actually the guy that was in the town the whole time was worse. So they apologize to her, but I'm not quite sure how they come to that realization.
I don't know.
They try to burn her at the stake. I don't think they witnessed the showdown between her and Uncle Vinny, so I don't understand how they have this change of heart at all.
I don't know. It's bizarre.
Yeah, so there's two things that are leveled at the movie. One is the characters aren't developed, which is Cassandra Peterson says, well, that's just because there's too many. They gave us too many. They forced us to have these kids and we couldn't do anything with them in the time available. And the other thing, as you point out, I don't know what the message is. It sort of hints towards several that are great.
Yeah.
But it's not really clear. They don't quite clinch it.
Yeah, I don't know why the townspeople rally with her at the end. It doesn't make any sense.
No.
Like, if anything, the only thing that the Vinny character, Uncle Vinny, does that is bad, that the townspeople see, is he turns three people into pigs. And that's it. So I guess those three people just told everyone else, like, oh, this guy, not good. But Elvira, good. But I don't know. It just seems very strange because everyone's kind of running around because it's raining or something in that sort of climactic scene. I'm not sure. So if it was sort of more clear, you would see characters that wanted to be different throughout the movie, and then at the end they turn up like all punk rock or something.
Yeah.
Or like a man dressing up as a woman or something like that, something much more clear, but no one really changes at all. Everyone's just the same except they accept Elvira.
Yeah.
And that's it.
That is it. Elvira as a figure has always been a champion of and for the LGBTQ community.
Yes.
So the film is dedicated to Robert Redding, who was Cassandra Peterson's friend and helped her come up with the image, the wig and the dress, the whole look of Elvira, who unfortunately passed away before filming started or during production, I believe. So it's very sad. And he was, I believe, a gay man. And Elvira as a figure is the classic other. And it's the reason why people in marginalized minorities gravitate towards horror, because so much it's about the outsider and the things that are being othered. So Elvira as a fictional character has always had those sorts of associations. And of course, recently Cassandra Peterson has revealed that she's a member of the LGBTQ community herself, that she's been in a relationship with a woman for 20 years now.
Yes.
So there's that sort of hanging around the fringes of it. And this general sense of sex positivity and being yourself and being true to people and not making assumptions about people, maybe. There's just sort of a general air of it, but it's not terribly specific.
Do you think it was purely the time? You know, you couldn't be outwardly gay in 1988. I don't know. It could have been the time when it came out. I did want to ask, like, so Robert Redding, her friend and co-creator of the Elvira character, was that a reference to the Bob character? His name is Bob Redding.
Yeah, it is.
Movie.
It's a tribute to him, the name Bob Redding. Yeah.
Ah, right.
And the film is, yeah, as I say, dedicated to him at the end as well.
Yeah. Going back to her appearance, like, I feel like, wow, she must have been quite influential in terms of, like, the drag community and trans culture. Like, the way she dresses just feels very drag.
Yeah.
Her makeup is like over the top crazy, like a huge fake eyelashes and eye makeup, and her hair is massive and her dress is just over the top. So yeah, must have been very influential for the drag community.
I'm sure, yeah. I mean, it's such a camp look. I mean, I had this whole conversation with some of my female friends after watching it, just sending gifs of her in this outfit, jumping up and down, saying, I'm sorry, my complete ignorance. How does the whole bra situation work here? Because
Yeah.
her boobs seem to defy gravity, but because there's this split in her dress and you can see all the way down to her navel almost,
Yeah.
there's nothing visible there that's sort of holding. And yeah, so my friend sort of gently showed me straps and sticky things, and there's
Yes.
all this sort of armory that can go on under there to make that happen. But I can't imagine it's particularly comfortable. But it looks amazing, as we said. It was quite mesmerizing at points, especially when she does her big Las Vegas act at the end of the film, for which she had to
the tassels.
the tassels, yeah, which of course Cassandra Peterson learned as a Vegas dancer herself. That's how she started out, and she had this amazing night with Elvis where he told her to get out of Vegas and pursue something else before she gets stuck. Yeah, it's an amazing story, an amazing woman with an incredible life that she's led.
Yeah.
And it's culminated in this tassel spinning skill that's really quite mesmerizing to watch at the end of the movie.
It is.
Now it's time for Random Trivia.
So, Dan, what fascinating piece of trivia did you find in your great aunt's cookbook today?
Well, and there is a scene in this movie where she replicates the flash dance scene. I'm not entirely sure why, but she does.
No.
And it's supposed to be water. It's supposed to fall on her in this very sort of seductive pose that she pulls. But the evil Patty character replaces the water with tar. And so tar falls on Elvira, but that tar is actually tempera paint. It's a kind of washable paint, often used, I think, for kids, for face paint, that sort of thing. But yeah, the sheer force of the paint falling on Elvira, she felt like her neck was gonna break, like it was like being punched in the face.
Oh no!
Which is horrifying to hear. That she didn't sustain any more sort of serious injuries.
Yeah, I know. I had a little piece of trivia as well.
Yes.
One of the three teenagers, of course, is played by Chris Cam, and he said during his audition there was a whole other group of kids in there, and one of them was drop dead gorgeous, and he said, I have no chance of getting this role if they want a handsome guy, because this kid is just pant-wettingly handsome. There's no way I'm getting it. But that guy did not get the role because Cassandra Peterson said, if he's in the movie, it will make no sense that Elvira is going after Bob because this kid is just stunning.
Yeah.
So she said no and said go with Chris Cam. And she regrets it because if she'd said yes to this guy, then she would have had the first movie to star Brad Pitt.
Wow.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Brad Pitt.
Wow.
But he was too handsome. He lost the role because he was too handsome.
Yeah. Well, I can imagine that. Yeah.
And that's our trivia.
Yeah. Going back to sort of what she sort of personifies in terms of her character being very resilient, someone that's, an outsider that is embracing who she is. I think it does stem back to when she was a baby. She actually had a terrible accident with a pot of boiling water where she was only 18 months old and something happened. She spilled all this boiling water all over her.
Oh, wow.
And so when her mum was taking her to the ER, like skin was just peeling off her everywhere her mum was holding her.
Oh, no.
And she had, I think it was 35% of her body had third-degree burns, and she had to undergo like a new penicillin treatment and skin grafts. And so, growing up with like all these scars and stuff like that, and having to cover up, and then becoming someone that shows a lot of skin.
Yes.
It's pretty amazing, like how she sort of overcome all of this adversity and sort of hardship to become very, very confident and very, very proud of who she is.
Yeah. And she just feels like a great person to be around. She doesn't take any nonsense, but she's kind and just accepts everybody for who they are and encourages them. And she can take care of herself. I mean, all these times where she's attacked by men, she gets rid of them. I mean, she always sends them packing. Sometimes she needs help, like Bob has to intervene in the bowling alley when two men are... I mean, goodness only knows what they were going to do.
God.
It's not going to end well, and Bob has to intervene.
No.
But she kicks one of them herself, and she sends the real estate agent packing out of the door when he lunges for her. So she can take care of herself, but you feel like she shouldn't really have to this much, but that's...
Yeah. I
the
mean,
80s, I
when you
guess.
talk about it again, like with the whole female empowerment, like she doesn't need saving at the end.
No.
Like if anything, Bob is completely useless. Like
Yeah.
he gets his ass like handed to him by Vinny, and she saves the day herself.
She does, and heads off into the sunset for her big show in Vegas, which leads us nicely into the music. So the music in this movie is composed by James B. Campbell, and most of his professional credits are as an orchestrator, primarily on Alan Silvestri scores. So he worked on things like Romancing the Stone and Back to the Future.
Right.
They wanted Danny Elfman to do the score. He'd worked on the other Groundling success story, Pee Wee Herman. He'd worked on his films.
Right.
But Danny Elfman said, you couldn't afford me at this point.
Okay.
So, they ended up with an orchestrator who was trying to become a composer in his own right. He doesn't have that many other credits. It's exactly that stuff that I always talk about hating. It's late 80s, early 90s digital sampling synthesizers trying to sound like acoustic instruments. So, you have things like the synth panpipe rendition of Morning from Peer Gynt when Elvira wakes up in the morning, and most of the time it's just sort of, pads and organs and stings and so on. So I don't find the score particularly interesting. And then the soundtrack itself is filled with lots of songs, but because they couldn't afford the original songs, they are all cover versions. Got a cheesy cover of Shout and a cheesy cover of Town Without Pity. I mean, even Cassandra says in this commentary track that she thinks that those choices are just a bit too on the nose and not really in keeping with the kind of rock chick vibe that she was trying to create.
Yeah.
But then for those numbers, there's the opening theme track, and you've got the song she sings in Vegas at the end, which includes a rap section, which is... I mean, it's all very of late 80s, early 90s it's pretty awful.
Yeah.
I have to say. I sort of thought it was all. I mean, I enjoyed it, but I mean, it's pretty terrible.
Yeah, it did feel very TV movie to me, like very low budget.
Yeah.
Everything you would expect. If it was quirky, comedic, you heard some kind of plucky and quirky. If it was scary, you would have some pads. Like, I don't know. It wasn't anything I wasn't expecting. It wasn't anything hugely memorable. And yes, I feel like on the cheap.
Yes. Very much so. Which is something Elvira isn't, that's for sure.
No. I mean, talking, there's a bit of a tangent, but I did hear that the hair that she has, her sort of bouffant hair, a lot of people describe it as a beehive. She has come out and said that it's not a beehive. She calls it a knowledge bump hairstyle. I don't know if that's a very popular name for it. But it was inspired by Ronnie Spector of the singing group The Ronettes.
Oh.
So that sort of hairstyle. And again, very different to Vampira and Morticia Addams.
Yeah, very different. And quite fitting considering the Ronettes for the sort of vibe that they're creating with the town. It does feel like it's the 50s or the 60s in that town.
Yeah.
Like it's frozen in amber.
Yeah, exactly. Another thing I heard was that initially Cassandra Peterson didn't want to go for this very Morticia Addams look. Her original idea was to go for a look that Sharon Tate had in the film The Fearless Vampire Killers.
Oh.
So keeping with her red wavy hair, because Cassandra Peterson has red hair, not black hair.
Yes.
So keeping with the long red wavy hair, and instead of black, wearing white. So I guess going for that sort of purity look, and then putting on sort of dead girl makeup.
Right.
So like sort of black rings around the eyes, that sort of thing. Pale, very pale. So yeah, very different vibe, which I would have been, it would have been interesting to see.
Yeah, it is fun to see her playing. Is it her mother or her aunt in the flashback?
Oh,
that's
right.
actually Cassandra Peterson with her native red hair color.
Yeah, right.
In the flashback,
I didn't realize.
and in the portrait. Yeah.
Coming to you live from the Movie Oubliette Theatre, it's the prestigious Mobley Awards.
Hey, it's the Mobley Awards. It's where we present our favourite sex, innuendo, valley girl parts of the film in a number of fire-breathing categories.
Best quote.
Probably the most famous quote is her big speech, which I don't know whether that might be what you were going to say. Her big speech is, "But if they ever ask about me, tell them I was more than a great pair of boobs. I was also an incredible pair of legs." And tell him that I never turned down a friend. I never turned down a stranger, for that matter. And tell him that when all is said and done, I only want people to remember me by two simple words. Any two, as long as they're simple. Which, it's a wonderful quote, and apparently Cassandra Peterson had to do it on her first day. So she was terrified, but she does a great job of it, so well done to her. But my actual favourite quote is one that she says right at the beginning when she gets fired because the new station owner, he wants her to sleep with him and she doesn't. And she says, "I'll never work for that sleazeball again. I'll just have to find myself a new sleazeball." So there's just this admission that Hollywood is just full of sleazeballs. She draws the line at one guy once he sort of sexually assaults her. But she's aware of the reality that she's just going to have to pick another one and hope that works out better. Which is pretty damning, but actually quite satirical. So it made me roar. I thought that was hilarious.
Best hair or costume.
Is it going to be Elvira? I mean, she's just, she's a standout. I mean, I would pick one scene in particular. It's when she's sleeping. And she's in like that sort of black, it's a black lace corset, like sort of negligee, and then her hair is out like it's almost like a a sea of vines or like a Medusa snake hair. It looks amazing.
It does, yeah. That's a standout shot that I'm sure has been peddled around the internet loads of times to represent this film. Apparently she's laying, that's not just one wig, she's like laying on 50 wigs.
Yeah, it kind of looks that way.
Yeah. But it looks amazing. It's been beautifully designed, that shot. It's great. As a second guess, I would say Robin transforming. So I just love that after being chastened by her grandparents, I think they are, for wearing a dab of makeup on her face, when she finally gets to unleash herself with Elvira's influence, she transforms and she just has this mass of permed hair cascading down one side of her face. It's so 80s. And then these bangs for a fringe and a purple sweater with a lacy doily collar and frilly ankle socks with blue bows on them.
Yeah.
So it's kind of this mix of 80s Cyndi Lauper explosion and like cute 50s, because she's not quite got the, you know, the access to the clothes that she needs, or it's a sort of mix of the two. Anyway, she looks hilarious.
Yeah.
Most 80s moment.
I was going to say turning a slim premise into a movie because this only seemed to happen around this time, late 80s, early 90s. I think she's groundbreaking, but I was looking at all the things where a TV show was turned into a movie around this period, and most of the time it's taking a beloved 50s or 60s TV show and turning it into a modern movie to get the adults' nostalgia and the kids seeing something reinvented in a different way. So, you know, The Addams Family and The Fugitive, the Beverly Hills Billies, the Brady Bunch movie, loads of them. But this whole thing of taking an SNL sketch like Wayne's World or the Coneheads, or Kids in the Hall taking a sketch comedy and turning it into a narrative film. Mystery Science Theater was turned into a movie, although it was basically just another episode. But this idea of taking a tiny sort of slim premise and then beefing it out into a whole movie with a narrative and a backstory just seems to be very much of this time, and specifically only this time. I can't think of a corresponding trend now.
Yeah, definitely feel like the 80s and 90s, 100%. Well, I mean, my 80s nomination for this movie would be, you mentioned it, the rap at the end, because everyone and their dog was inserting raps to music.
And they really shouldn't have.
Favorite scene?
I'll have to go with what I wanted this movie to be more of, which is obviously the last act, the third act, with the witch burning. I felt like that escalated very quickly. Like it went from just being annoyed at this person to let's burn her at the stake. I mean, I'm not sure how that correlates. But anyway, I did like it. I mean, after the witch burning, with Vinny going full demon and breathing fire and doing all sorts of things I didn't know he could do. Yeah, I wanted more of that. I mean, it was really cheesy and ridiculous with a sort of Disney-esque animation going on. But I don't know. I loved it. It was B grade and ludicrous and hand severing. It's good.
Yeah, definitely wanted more of the magic and the silly monsters. My personal favorite is the crockpot monster scene. There's a section in the middle where it looks like it'll turn into a goofy practical magical style adventure with weird monsters, and instead it just reverts back to the fish out of water drama / comedy again. But I loved the crockpot monster scene. I thought it was really fun and inventive and genuinely surprising.
Yeah.
Most cliche moment.
Well, we've talked about it before. The orphaned child is the magical chosen one. You're a witch, Elvira. Yeah. But, I mean, kudos to putting makeup on that baby.
Yeah. Oh, yes. I know. I mean, ridiculous. Yes.
I just roared with laughter at that just because of the stunned look on the baby's face. But yes, it's definitely a cliche that the orphan child that doesn't know much about their parents finds out this whole backstory and they end up being the chosen one with witches and powers beyond their wildest dreams.
Yeah.
It's more of a fantasy cliche than horror, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. Cliche for me, I mean, I guess the hidden bookshelf with the demonic basement with candles and altar and all sorts of things going on. But also, like, this is more of I guess a comedy cliche when she does the makeover on the dog. And it's like, oh, it's going to be Punky, isn't it? And sure enough, a punky dog with a pink mohawk and studs and all sorts of things going on.
Best special effect.
Yep, it's the Crock-Pot monster. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's got arms, it's got a mouth. It looks like it's made out of vegetables or something.
Yeah.
It's such a great effect done by Steve Laporta. And apparently he did all the effects and he had like pretty much free reign to do whatever he wanted, which is amazing.
Yeah. There are some details in there I really love. One of them is the articulated arms that the monster has and how they managed to get shots where, like, when they first push the lid back on it, its arms seem to reflexively switch round to trying to grab the lid to push it off again. And you think, wow, that must have been really hard to coordinate, but it works perfectly. And then when they go to tip it into the sink, it seems to go on forever when they're pouring it out.
Yeah.
Like this whole long thing comes out of this pot that's like
it's like
8 inches tall.
like a Mary Poppins trick.
Favorite sound effect.
My favourite sound effect comes from the moment in the film when Elvira washes the windscreen of her convertible car.
Yes.
And ends up rhythmically pushing her ample breasts up against the glass. And there is this wonderful squeaking noise that is obviously her wiping the window, but just mentally you sort of transfer it to her breasts sort of straining against the window. And I was killing myself laughing.
Most funniest moment.
I've mentioned it already. The thing that made me laugh the loudest and the most was just suddenly cutting to a baby with Elvira makeup on.
Yeah, the funniest for me, I think it's such a cliche scene, and it's in a lot of movies, but the sex potion scene, that the casserole that she delivers to the Falwell Morality Club annual picnic. And they all eat the food, and then there's the potion that's in it that makes everyone just a little bit randy, I guess. Most of the people, a bit elderly. So it just makes it even funnier. But I mean, it is such a cliche scene. You see it in a lot of movies. It's normally the drug that's been spiked in the food or the drink or whatever, but in this case it's a magical potion. I do like it though because Edith McClurg is such a hateable character in this movie.
Yes.
She's so by the book, she's so untainted, and then when she takes the potion, everything is on the table. And in that scene where she says to the guy, there's a guy laying on the ground, and she says, excuse me, is this seat taken? And proceeds to lift up her dress and sit on the guy. And I was not expecting that. So yeah, roaring with laughter.
Okay, and that's our Mooblies.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Zoe Wells from Film Joy, and you're listening to Movie Oubliette.
Okay, it's final verdict time. Should 1988's Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, be freed from the oubliette and given its own show in Vegas and be praised by all, or should it be burnt at the stake and shuffled back into the oubliette to be lost forever? Conrad, it's the first watch for both of us. What's your final take on this?
Yeah, it's an odd one, isn't it? Because we've talked about the various problems with it. I think it's overlong. The director talks about that he thinks that there's probably a really funny 80-minute movie in this 95-minute movie.
Yeah.
It kind of flags in the middle. It's uneven, so you get this fish out of water comedy, and then all of a sudden it turns into this fantastical monster movie with this evil villain and magic and so on. Thematically, it's not really clear what the theme is, although you generally get the sense it's about independence and personal expression and freedom and a rejection of sort of conservative repression. But at the same time, it's not really spelled out or consistent. In terms of character development, it doesn't really work, as Elvira herself, Cassandra, has pointed out, because there's too many characters.
Yeah.
But it's well shot and it's hilariously funny. I was never bored. I never turned against it. I never hated it. And mainly that's down to Cassandra Peterson and the persona of Elvira, who I'd never experienced before, but in terms of a showcase for her and for breathing life and putting flesh on this character, I think it's wonderful and quite a nice thing to discover, because as we've said during the Mooblies, it's a type of comedy that just, it doesn't exist anymore. So to find one that's as well executed as this and as well-meaning and as joyful as this from 1988 that you haven't seen and have no experience of was really quite a joy for me. So I would say, I mean, it's not a great piece of filmmaking, but I would say yes. I would say, yeah, go for it. Watch it. If you fancy a ridiculous, wacky, sex-positive comedy with a strong female central character that'll have you rolling on the floor laughing, go for it. This is your movie.
All right. I don't know whether I enjoyed the comedy in this movie. I think it is very much before my time. It is, like you said, a comedy that does not exist anymore. I kind of found a lot of the jokes fell flat or were like, oh no, really? Like, poor girl kind of thing. But knowing that she wrote it, and I think the legacy of Elvira as an icon, as an idol for many people of LGBT community, or anyone that's just feeling like they are the outsider, like an outcast. This is a really, really inspiring movie. I don't think I'm the right demographic for this film. I think a lot of people will really love this movie. I'm not sure whether I did, but I don't think I could possibly put this back into Oubliette. I think it is too important for so many people and more people to come as well. It's fascinating looking back on sort of the progression of this type of character from Morticia Addams to Vampira to Elvira and beyond. And she seems to be the most successful out of the three as well, although there's a new Wednesday Addams show that's come out. But she's got a lot of stuff to watch. And I would be keen to check out her other movie, Elvira's Haunted Hills, I think it's called. I don't know whether it's any good, but I'm interested. And yeah, I think this film, despite me not really enjoying it, I think I'd enjoyed it the second time round, but yeah, it's too important to leave in the darkness of the oubliette. I think it should see the light.
Okay, well, that's good. Well, let's just pack it into this convertible and give it a little push. There you go.
Here's to my big opening. Bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you again, Wicked Person, our patron that chose this movie. I can't wait for the next patron's choice where we discover something we've never seen before.
Yeah.
But if you want to follow us and keep up with our future episodes, you can find us on all the social media platforms as Movie Oubliette.
And you can email us at movie.oubliette@gmail.com. And if, like Wicked Person, you would like to suggest movies for us to cover in future episodes and vote on them and get access to extended portions of the show, then go on over to Patreon, where for as little as $1, you can do such a thing. And for $5, you can get access to exclusive monthly minisodes and extended interviews with our very special guests.
Yes, and merchandise, we do have it on Redbubble. All the things all the things. And if you haven't already, give us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you are consuming us.
Yes.
It does help us out a lot. And share us around as well. Tell your friends.
Tell your friends.
So, Conrad, what are we going to do next episode?
Well, next time we're stepping forward into your favourite decade, the 90s, but we are going to be south of the border because we'll be looking at the 1993 Mexican independent horror drama film, Kronos.
Ooh, this has been on my watch list for the longest time. I think this was maybe the first movie I put on our list of things, movies to cover in future episodes from the very beginning. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. Is it Guillermo del Toro's first movie as well?
It's Guillermo del Toro's first movie. It's not often talked about. Obviously, fans of Guillermo del Toro will know of it. Other people will probably have just picked up on his American films later on. So it'll be interesting to go back and look at it. It had a budget of $2 million and only yielded $621,000 at the box office. So it was not a big hit when it first came out, but it is a fascinating film to look at. And Ron Perlman is in it. So,
of course.
Yes.
Yeah. Pre-Hellboy.
You got to have Ron Perlman in there. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And this one was suggested by our guest, who will be joining us, a friend of the pod.
Yes. Can't wait for that. Can't wait for that Google.
Yes. Okay, until next time.
Yes, unpleasant dreams.
Unpleasant dreams.
Goodbye.
Bye.
We review the films others tend to forget. Come with us and open up the movie oubliette.